So picture this. Your beloved bearded dragon, your little sun-loving, bug-crunching buddy, suddenly just stops. Stops eating, ignores its favorite snacks, and just sleeps all day in the coldest part of the tank. And your heart just drops, right? Your first thought is the absolute worst one. Oh no, something is terribly wrong. It is a truly panic-inducing moment for any owner, especially if you're new to all this. And that leads you to this terrifying question. And trust me, you are not the first person to ask this. It's probably the #1 fear that sends new dragon owners into a frantic late-night Google search. But what if I told you that this bizarre, almost zombie-like behavior might not be a sign of sickness at all? What if it's just an ancient survival instinct kicking into gear right there in your living room? Let's dive in and figure out what's really going on. Okay, so let's pull back the curtain on this whole process. We need to start with what's happening inside your dragon's head and its body. My goal here is to turn that fear you're feeling into fascination by really understanding the why behind what you're seeing. So the official name for this deep, long sleep is brumation. Think of it as the reptile version of hibernation. It's how wild beardies survive the brutal winters back in the Australian outback when the sun gets weak, the temperatures drop, and there's just no food to be found. It is an incredible evolutionary trick, and even in a perfectly warm, food-filled tank, millions of years of instinct can just switch on and tell your dragon, hey, it's time to power down. So the most important thing to get is this. It's not a bug, it's a feature. It's part of who they are. Now, let's get a few key facts straight, because this is important. First, brumation isn't a total shutdown like you see with a hibernating bear. Their body is still running, just in super slow motion. Also, don't be surprised if they skip a year or two. That's totally normal. But this last point is absolutely critical. A baby dragon, one that's under about a year old, simply does not have the fat reserves to safely get through this. So if you see a baby trying to brumate, that is an immediate red flag. All right. This is the big one. This is the question that keeps owners up at night. How do you, a worried parent, confidently know the difference between a natural sleep and a real medical emergency? This next part, this is your field guide for making that super important call. This chart right here is your best friend. It breaks down the key differences perfectly. See, brumation is a slow burn. It happens gradually over weeks. Illness, on the other hand, often hits fast and hard. With brumation, they just sort of lose their appetite. With illness, you'll probably see other signs, like a constantly black beard. That's a major stress signal. But most importantly, look for physical signs of distress. Are they struggling to breathe? Do their eyes look sunken? Those are never normal. That always means it's time for a vet. Think of it this way. Brumation is a change in behavior. Illness is a change in their physical health. So, you've gone through the checklist and you're pretty sure it's just brumation. You can breathe a sigh of relief, right? Well, almost. Now we have to talk about one of the most hotly debated topics in the entire reptile community, where your good intentions can actually cause some serious harm. See, a bearded dragon is basically a little solar-powered furnace, but during brumation, that furnace is deliberately turned way, way down. And if you try to mess with that process, well, that's where things get dangerous. If you go online for advice, you are going to get hit with a firestorm of conflicting information. Some people will swear you have to keep everything normal. Others will tell you to gradually lower the temps. And then you'll find some really advanced breeders who do a complete shutdown of all heat. It is incredibly confusing, and honestly, doing the wrong thing can be really risky. So let's just cut right through all of that noise. For the vast majority of us who just have a pet dragon, the safest and best approach is actually the simplest one. Leave your heat and your lights on their normal schedule. Your dragon is smarter than you think. It knows what it needs. It will physically move to the cool side of the tank to find the right temperature. You have to let it regulate itself. Now this number is probably the single most important piece of information in this entire explainer. No matter what you do, the temperature inside that tank should never, ever drop below 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 Celsius. Any colder than that, and their immune system, which is already suppressed, just can't fight off potentially deadly respiratory infections. This is your absolute, non-negotiable safety floor. So while we agree not to mess with the heat, there's one environmental tweak that's generally recommended. You can kind of help sync up with their internal clock by making it feel like winter. So you can gradually reduce the number of hours the lights are on each day, but, and this is really important, you have to keep that vital UVB light running during those shorter hours, just in case they decide to pop out for a bit of sun. Okay, we've covered the theory and the why. Now let's get to the practical part. We're going to walk through a super clear step-by-step checklist that you can actually follow from the very first moment you think brumation might be starting, all the way until they're wide awake again. Before they go down for that long sleep, you've got a few crucial prep steps. Ideally, you want to get a vet check to make sure they don't have any nasty parasites, which could become a huge problem with a slow immune system. As soon as they stop eating, you stop offering food. And this next one is critical. Make absolutely sure their digestive system is completely empty. Undigested food will literally rot in their gut. And then just give them a safe, dark little cave to hide away in. So while they're sleeping, your job is pretty simple, but it's still important. Make sure fresh water is always available. A gentle, warm bath about once a week is great for hydration, and it gives you a chance to do a quick visual check on them. And weighing them weekly is your best tool. If their weight stays stable, that's a fantastic sign. And now for what not to do. This is just as important. Never, ever, ever try to force feed them. Their digestion has literally stopped, so doing this is incredibly dangerous. Try to avoid handling them too much. They need deep, undisturbed rest. And please don't panic. It is completely normal for them to go weeks, sometimes even months, without eating or drinking anything. You just have to trust the process. Then, one day, you'll see them start to stir and come out of their hide. That's your cue. It's time to wake everything back up. Immediately crank the lights and the heat right back to their full summer schedule. A nice warm soak can help kickstart their system. You can start offering food again, but don't be surprised if it takes a little while for their appetite to come back. Your main job is just to watch and make sure they start slowly gaining that weight back over the next few weeks. We've covered a whole lot of ground, but I know things can still feel a bit uncertain. So let's create a very clear and simple safety net. These are the absolute, non-negotiable situations where you stop guessing and you pick up the phone and call a qualified reptile vet. Okay, here is your definitive list. If a baby under 10 or 12 months tries to brumate, call the vet. If you see any of those physical signs of illness we talked about, call the vet. If they are losing weight week after week, or if this whole process drags on for more than 4 months, it's time to get a professional involved. Trust your gut on this, and when in doubt, just make the call. So if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's this. You have to trust the animal. This is a normal, healthy process that's hardwired into their DNA. By understanding what's happening, providing a safe environment, and just keeping a gentle eye on them, you can turn a time of real anxiety into a pretty fascinating glimpse into the ancient, wild world your little pet comes from.